ain't take no loss. Yeah, I don't even know what it costs. Yeah, I hit the ground then it go off. Yeah, hit the ground then it go off. Yeah, yeah, run it. Ooh, I really feel it's my time, think it's my year. Yeah, yeah, I really feel it's my time, think it's my year. Yeah, yeah, I really feel it's my time, think it's my year. Yeah, yeah, I really feel it's my time, think it's my.
All right, I am here with Ty Garrett, the founder and CEO of DataFlick. We have a great interview scheduled for you right now, and we're going to talk about how smart data can get. The smarter your data, the better the results are going to be in your marketing campaigns, especially direct mail. And if you're targeting distressed sellers, this is the interview that you're going to want to see. You know, direct mail costs a lot of money. Trying to target the right sellers, calling the right sellers, getting in front of the right sellers is the key. So to have that correct data is imperative. And Ty has cracked the code, started the company. When did you guys start? You said you started in...
Yeah, so we were founded back in March of 2020, like right after the pandemic started. It's the best time to start a company, really.
Yeah, and then why data? And now, I mean, obviously you saw where data was going, but you know, you were real estate, you were doing wholesaling, you worked for a wholesaling company, but then you had this idea and then you moved toward data. What sparked that idea?
So the biggest reason that we wanted to start with data first is, to me, like, you know, the best way I've heard it explained is data is kind of the new oil, where it's going to be fitting into like every single part of real estate, and it's just the most critical piece and kind of bleeds into every like aspect of it. So to us, we're like, if we can get data right, then it'll be much easier to get everything else right and kind of like set all of the, you know, all the other products that we have like coming down the road just on top of really high quality data.
Right. So what was your flagship product that you launched with?
So when we first launched, it was just the investor product. And the way that we have it today is there's kind of two main flagships. One is for realtors and one is for investors. One is predicting who would want to sell off market to an investor, and one is predicting who would want to sell on market, like on the MLS with an actual agent. So to us, we were like, we feel like if we can get the investor product right and predict when someone will want to sell at a discount, it's much easier to figure out who's going to sell in general, you know, and that's what really sparked our realtor product versus the investor product. So we're like, let's start with the hardest one. If we can get that right, it'll be much easier to kind of backfill and move into the realtor space after.
Yeah, I can tell you I've sent millions and millions of direct mail pieces over the years, and
Oh, yeah.
you know, and if you know, the mail piece is, maybe 30-40% of the equation. You know, the
Yep.
data is the main portion, and I have mailed and I've got tons of mail back because I just got return mail, or sellers called and they said, I've already sold the house 6 months ago, or
Yep.
you know, they say they're in foreclosure, but now they're not in foreclosure, or now they're in bankruptcy, or the property already foreclosed, you know. So
Yep.
if you don't get data right, then you're wasting a ton of money, and you know, which is, you know, huge opportunity. And a cost per lead is probably one of the most important metrics for profitability as a, you know, in their real estate investment game, especially as we're cultivating distressed properties. So if your cost per lead, you know, is, you know, under $100, I mean, you can operate at a 40-50% margin. If your cost per lead is $300, $400, $500, it just eats that P&L all the way down. So so the bottom line is that, you know, you talked about this real estate investor model and you have this predictive model. What is the predictive factors, you know, that that will give you an indication that someone wants to sell in a distressed state?
It's a good question. So the way that we do it is there's kind of two main pillars to our data. The left side is all of the actual like housing data. So think about what's going on around the location of the homes, like what is the property characteristics of the home. So think about like anything as simple as bed bath count, all the way to, do they actually have like a pool, or like what's the size of their home, things of that nature. And then specifically on the borrower information too. So like what's their interest
Mm.
rate, like how much equity they have, things about the home specifically from the borrower perspective. And the other side is all demographic data. So think about information that you would want to know on the homeowner. So their age, what's their income, how's their credit, what's going on financially for them. Are there any big like economic things that have happened in their life, like a foreclosure or bankruptcy, things like that. And then all of those kind of niche like distress lists that everyone knows about. And that can be anything from, pre-foreclosures and vacancies and all the really big lists like probate and divorce. So we take all those things and kind of model them together. And from there, we have every transaction that happens over the last 40 years about, and we'll go back about the last 3 years, say, here's every single person that sold to an investor. Here's every single person that sold with a realtor. And really, if you boil it down to be very simple, we essentially score every property from 0 to 100. The higher that score, the more likely they are to sell to an investor and vice versa. And really, like, it's just a big lookalike model to find out who sold to an investor. And we want to find people who look just like those people, kind of like a Facebook lookalike audience.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, we do a lot of pay-per-click advertising as well. And with Google, they have 5 gigs of data just on me, right? So they take that search data and all their graph data and their cell phone data and everything else. And what they do is, so what's cool about Google is which is you're doing and this is kind of the first time I'm hearing this in this data outside of online space, to be able to find a lookalike audience of so they take conversion data of someone that converted on a site, and then they match that conversion data to find more people that are going to search, and then they show that ad to those type of people that gets more conversions. So you do it in a way where you can predict based upon future people or anybody in the marketplace in any geographic location, predict based upon this historical score that they have a likelihood of selling. Now, what's that score look like? Is it 70%, 70 points they sell at X percent of value, or 70 points they have a 90% chance of selling at below market? Or like, tell me about that scoring system, because that's interesting.
Yep. So our big kind of like thing that we're known for is we tell people to reach out to 50 to 100 on our list, because every property has a score, and we're only going to send you those properties that have a score of 50 to 100. And on that list that we provide you, we're going to predict about 70% of investor transactions before they actually happen. So if you just hit every person on that list in like every type of marketing channel that you can, you're going to get in front of about 70% of the opportunities that are in your market. And the way that we also approach this is more in a way
where
where
you just said, how big that is? What you just said.
That
okay,
you
so
say it
so
so
guys,
often,
let
you
me
get
just
used to it.
rewind, and I just want to rewind that for everybody. So imagine if you could put an X-ray on your market, and that X-ray basically pinpoint every seller that would sell below market, and you could pinpoint and pick every single property to sell and only mail those people, or only talk to those people, or only knock on those doors or whatever. What would that would like change everything? Do you know what I mean? Because
It would.
now we did a lot of direct mail in Phoenix. We drop several 100,000 a month in direct mail, but we blanket the direct mail, and we wouldn't target demographic to a degree, but we target more property and age of property. But we really didn't have a good demographic data, and we still did tons of business. So now if you put in the demographic data, it's amazing. So back to your lead scoring. So 70, so say that again, what you said, that 70% of those people are going to sell distressed to a cash buyer. Is that how it?
So the first thing is, like, we know exactly on average how many investor transactions have happened in your market. So it's like, the first thing is most people don't even really know what is going on in their market from an investor transaction perspective. The way that we do that is we have a huge kind of registry of buyers. So think about a very, very advanced cash buyer list. And this is where we've linked entities together with mailing addresses. And anytime that registry of buyers has purchased 2 or more in a 6-month period, we constitute that as a legitimate investor. And every time they buy a property, we know it's an investor transaction. because we can see exactly like what they're buying it at from a ARV perspective and all that good stuff too. So first, it's like we can tell you how many investor transactions are going on in your market, and let's say that there's 100, and on the list that we give you, that's going to have the scores from 50 to 100. That's going to cover about 70 transactions of that 100 that go on in your market. That's assuming you actually are hitting everyone and you're making sure you actually reach out to them in like every possible way that you can. Because you have to think a lot of these people are distressed, and some people may not respond to a direct mail piece, but they may respond to a cold call, or they may respond to a door knock, or they may respond to a digital ad. So the people who do the best with us are the ones that can have multi-channel marketing that are hitting them in every possible way that they can.
Okay, so now let's talk about the actual data. You get name, phone number, first and last, phone number. How many phone numbers?
We do up to 5.
So you do 5 phone numbers, email address?
Up to 3.
Up to 3 email addresses. Okay. So then you get what other data would like a Google need? So they would need email. They would try to match it. So you can take this data, you can upload it to Google, and then create a targeted audience to market to.
Yep.
Okay.
So Meta does not like custom audiences as much as Google does. Google loves them. So what you could do is take all that
notice I
information.
didn't say Facebook.
I noticed that. I was like, he knows. So Meta does not like when you do that for whatever reason. And they're definitely more of like, because of like all the regulations and privacy acts that kind of hit them the hardest, they are more reluctant to let you do custom audience segmentation. But Google loves it, and it's very effective. So that's kind of like one use case that you could have our data that we see a ton of success with, where you actually upload that and then run things like Google ads or performance max ads. Those perform well, and then you can do retargeting ads across like Meta with actual Google ads as well. It's a little more advanced, but definitely possible, and we know a lot of people who do it. So from like kind of coming back to the data piece, there's a lot of other factors that we actually track. Those are just the 2 biggest. So some other examples are, all of our models are built by the state and then by the county. So there's like a Maricopa County model as an example, which is Phoenix, Arizona. And there's also a seasonal model. So there's a summer model and a winter model, because like, the housing market is very, very cyclical, and it changes pretty much every quarter, especially when you factor like economic things and like interest rates and things of that nature. So all of that data is also built in on top of like crime and school data as well. But the 2 biggest things are always the housing data and the demographic data.
Nice. Now on the demographic data, I know you have where you can stack list to increase score, I would take it.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Our models have all of those, the distress list built in as well. But on the actual list that we give you, we super stack them. So there's about 20 distress lists that are actually tagged for every property record as well. Obviously, if they're present, though. So the need for like list stacking and list building kind of goes away with us as well, because we do all that for you.
Beautiful. So a property that has they haven't paid their taxes, they're in foreclosure, they might be in bankruptcy or something like that. So, and then they're have a car that was repossessed or something, so they have all this type of stuff on that. I'm just guessing on certain data points and stuff.
You're doing great.
Yeah. So, but you have these data points. It increases that score, and the likelihood of them selling fast to an investor just increases. And that's amazing. You can download this data, upload it to Google, market to it, and send direct mail. That is insane. So can you show us what this scoring system looks like on, say, like Maricopa County per se?
Yeah. So the way that I'll share my screen real quick. So the way that I like
and
to break
then
this down,
by the way, Ty has something for free. He's actually going to give you the ability to log in and to tell him what you're going to give him for free. So thanks for sticking with us and watching this, because data is the most important thing in real estate in my mind, both with online marketing and offline marketing. So he's going to give you the ability to essentially log in and look at this thing. So check it out. So what are you gonna give him for free?
Yeah, so our really big flagship product alongside our data is called the market map. So the way that the market map works is we kind of categorize everything into the 3 Ps. So to us, the three P's are people first, which is the data. Think about like the distress list that you're reaching out to. Maybe it's predictive data, everything about the actual people that you're reaching out to. The second component is breaking it down into the place. So the place is focusing on the neighborhoods and the zip codes that matter the most for your marketing. Everyone, immediately when I said neighborhoods, you have in your mind like those neighborhoods that are like, man, if I got a deal here, like I know it would be a great opportunity and a great flip. There's also like areas that are just terrible. Maybe they may be like a really rural area, or maybe they're, a city center like downtown where people aren't going to like really sell to an investor. And even if they do, it's going to be a very hard deal to pull off. So the way that our system works is kind of detecting like those best areas and the best places you should focus on. The last piece is the actual property itself. And think about that as like the buy box and everything that you're trying to figure out as far as the properties that you're reaching out to. So this is a free tool where you can log into, maybe it's a county that you're thinking about launching, maybe it's a county that you're in now, and you can really like focus in and unlock that county and see all the analytics about it using the market map. So if you want to look at this, so Maricopa is Phoenix, which is where Sean, you're at, obviously. So everything that you see here is, first, if you were to just look at the county itself, this is what the county boundaries actually look like. And we have a tool that's proprietary to us that is essentially hand-drawn neighborhood boundaries. So there's a ton of different pockets within Maricopa. And if you wanted to focus on the best neighborhoods, and Sean, you know this area so much better than I do. So this place called Sycamore Farms has had the most investor transactions over a 9-month period. So if we wanted to see it and just to kind of zoom out just a little bit, this is what the county looks like. But this tiny pocket here has had about 26 investor transactions over the last 9-month period. So through our testing, when you focus on the neighborhoods that perform the best, you're already get like miles ahead of the competition because you can really focus in on those good pockets. And the other piece that's super important is there's a ton of neighborhoods that have no transactions that actually happen. And we immediately recommend to remove those areas because they're going to be really hard to dispo if you're wholesaling. And really the returns are very low there because there's a reason there's no investor transactions going on there and there's no deals to be had. So think about that as more of like those rural areas that I mentioned, or maybe those really, like downtown kind of city center vibes. Those always are going to have very low transaction volume. But if you look at this objectively, I don't know anything about this pocket, but this is one of the first areas that you would focus. So 50 to 100 on our scoring system, hitting the best neighborhood. And then if we switch over to more of the buy box data, this is a little bit of a confusing tool, but the way that we break this down is if you were to target area building mean square footage, and obviously we all know what year built, property value, and bed bath count is, there's about 352 investor transactions that happen in Maricopa County every month. And if we were to reach out to this exact buy box, that's going to get us in front of about 30% of transactions. But what's interesting is all of this is completely dynamic. So if you wanted to change this square footage, as an example, from 750 to 3250, now we're covering about 73% of investor transactions. So you can use this tool to see how many records you're going to reach out to on your direct mail list and also test a buy box before you actually launch a campaign. So those, in essence, are our three pieces.
I like that a lot. So what we did, when we were in Phoenix to try to get this data, we looked at all of our historical closed transactions and modeled the year built, and modeled the bed and bath, and modeled the square footage. And then we modeled the age of the owner, but we had to pull it manually from our historical closed data. We never had a tool like this. We can do that. Now you can point and click and literally just have it right there in front of you. So that's awesome.
Yeah. So this is, it's so interesting because you can pretty much see like every single transaction that's happened over that 9-month period and know exactly like what's going to happen based off of just that historical data. So it's kind of taking like what our models are based on and then applying more marketing tools in every way that you can to just like layer that unfair advantage, which is what we're all about.
Yeah, so you're not actually wasting money pulling data in areas that are irrelevant or not investor friendly areas, or even just sending direct mail to areas that are dormant.
Exactly. And the other interesting piece is like, this is a really good tool for figuring out like other areas that you want to market in, because I know a lot of people do virtual wholesaling and things like that. So
Yep.
all of our users have access to pretty much every county, every single pocket in the entire US. But what this free tool is you can come in and unlock your market and actually see like what's working and what's not working. The best way that like anyone can pretty much use this data now is by, everyone today targets by the zip code, but obviously the neighborhood data is proprietary to us. So if you wanted to focus on, we can go back to Phoenix. So that would be Arizona, and then hop back over to Maricopa. So the first thing is, if I were anyone on the call, is hop over to the zip code data. And if you focus on just the zip codes that have the most investor transactions and just limit your marketing to be in those pockets first, that's super
Mhm.
low hanging fruit that you can actually like get pretty tangible results on. And the lists that like we see are the hottest right now are definitely pre-foreclosure, vacancies massive, and senior homeowners homeowners actually. So if you took
Yeah,
those three data
senior
lists and you
homeowners.
can,
There's all the baby boomers are retiring right now, so now and they have
yep,
tons of equity, so they're selling their properties.
he's right. So you could target those kind of niche lists that everyone knows performs well. Just blast the top zip codes that have the most investor transactions using this column, and that alone is going to see you like that. That alone is going to get you much better results than probably what you're getting right now, because you're pulling it at the county level, if I had to guess. And you can
Right.
do all that with this free tool.
That's amazing. All right.
Yeah,
So what we'll do is, if you got this via email, if you're on YouTube watching, there's a link below that you can check it out. But yeah, definitely if you're on YouTube, it's a link below. Check that out, and you can get that free tool, and you can check that out on there from Ty. So shout out to you, Ty, for doing that. That's awesome. Okay, so
yeah, no problem.
now let's take it. So I want to be a subscriber of DataFlick. I get this tool. Let's say I get the free tool. Now I want to pull the top zip codes. And let's say I pull 10 top zip codes of area. And now I have, 50,000 potential properties in those zip codes, right? What could
Yep.
I do with the tool to basically narrow it down to the highest likelihood properties that are going to sell to an investor?
So if you're an actual subscriber, the first thing that I would do is toggle the score higher and higher. So like think
Mhm.
about 17 up versus 15 up. But we also see a lot of people do very specific campaigns based on the distressor. So an example of that is maybe you want to isolate the pre-foreclosure list. And everyone would say, well, I can just reach out to a pre-foreclosure list like without predictive data, which you could do that. But the biggest difference there is like, imagine that you have a pre-foreclosure list and there's 3,000 people on it. You can get that down to the top 500 that are probably going to transact one out of every 20, if I had to guess. Probably less than that, though.
Yeah.
So you can do very targeted approaches with like the niche data that's on top of our scores, or you can just focus on just the scoring system itself, which is what most people do, I would say.
Okay, so let's do a comparison. So I pull a foreclosure list from a competitor of yours, and it's 3,000.
Sure.
And then I pull a list from you in the same zip code. So I use the tool, find the zip codes. Now I'm doing a direct comparison, and we're going to get down to 500. What gets it from 3,000 to 500 that increases that likelihood of somebody to sell?
Oh, sorry, there was a little bit of a lag there. But the
Yeah.
way that it would the way that I would do it is, and like really explain it. So imagine like everyone that's in pre-foreclosure isn't necessarily like trying to sell. We're just
Mm,
targeting a straight up distress factor. So there's a
right.
lot more that actually goes into that model than just like how distressed they are. Because the kind of big components is like who in the past like looks like somebody who wants to sell to an investor, and then who is actually likely to sell, and then who is likely to sell at an actual discount. So those are kind of the three pieces of a triangle that's like generating that score.
Hmm.
So when you're talking about just targeting a blanket list, it's very, very different than using the predictive data elements, because we're trying to figure out who's going to sell at a discount and who's going to sell, not just like who's on a list. There's a huge difference in that. And there's like a lot of minor things that also go into it, right? So like we know when the auction date is of every pre-foreclosure. So the closer that auction date is, obviously the more motivated someone's going to get. So the higher the score
Right.
may be. Equity is another huge piece that a lot of people don't talk about. If someone is in pre-foreclosure, but they have no equity to actually sell, doesn't really matter if they're likely to
Yeah.
sell
Right.
at all. So there's a ton of like those minor details that are very hard to track when you're talking about just hitting like a blanket list. And when you get into the bigger markets and now you're starting to wave in a bunch of different factors and lists and things like that, the list size gets really big really fast. So the whole point of the scoring system is to really like refine the people that you're reaching out to automatically very fast. So the way that we would deploy data is at the first of every month, we call it day to day. So you're going to get your new refresh list where we remove all the transactions that happen, change all the scores, and everything is refreshed monthly. So
Wow.
really,
That's
you're just
huge.
downloading that, uploading it to all of your marketing softwares, and then you just hammer it for 30 days, and then you get your fresh list. And it's just a big cycle.
Wow. Okay. So it's interesting. We're talking this direct comparison. So you got 3,000, right, of this foreclosure list from one of your competitors versus
Yep.
Dataflix 500, right? So if you get a postcard you're going to send for 50 cents, you mail to this one list, you're going to target these people, but the cost is $1,500, right? And the
Exactly.
cost for here is $250. So you got 1,500 trying to find these 500 in here. There are the people that are going to sell, but you have to spend 1,500 to find that. Here you actually spend 250. So your ROI, or return on investment when it comes to marketing spend to return, is huge. Now you
Yeah.
10x that, like you're talking about. You 10x it here. You're talking 15 grand. Here you're talking $2,500. So it's just and then if you're doing on massive scale, you're talking, hundreds of thousands versus thousands.
Oh, yeah. So like one of our biggest users, they're spending about 750,000 a month on marketing, and they're in
Wow.
25 markets. So when you're talking about like companies at that scale, when like the amount of money that they're saving just by reaching out to the best people and kind of like top scores is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands over a month, and then multiply that by a year. And they're a hedge fund, so they're a little bit different on their exit strategies and things like that. But really, like the economy of scale is like the best as far as like users who see the most success with us, I would say.
Okay. And I think that's great. So now let's talk about taking the data. So now I download this data that comes refreshed every single month.
Yep.
What are your top users doing to reach the customer? We talked about PPC. We talked about postcards or direct mail. What would be other verticals that they could really basically surround the seller and have the highest chance of conversion?
Yes, it's a great question. So we have the luxury of like hundreds and hundreds of users and investors that are some of the largest in the country, like all kind of like telling us what works and what doesn't. And the first thing is it is very, very much market by market. And the way that I like to categorize this is kind of like into a tertiary, a secondary, and a primary market. And if you don't know what I mean by that,
Yep.
rural county Texas is kind of a tertiary market. And
Yep.
what works in both of those is very different. So the first thing, as far as mail goes, mail is by far number one right now. And to me, there's kind of like three different paths that you can take. There's that super premium route, and think about that as like a handwritten letter. And that is simply trying to cut through saturation inside of a huge MSA. So this would be like a handwritten forever stamp from someone like Ballpoint or Open Letter Marketing. And we see people use those in the really hot areas in those top neighborhoods, because what's going on now is so many people are sending direct mail. It's very, very hard to stand out in those mailboxes. So that's kind of the first thing that we've seen work really well. And then if you're in those markets or maybe those areas that are less saturated, there are some things that you can do as far as mail pieces go. There's kind of two paths. One is a soft offer check. If you don't know what a soft offer check is, imagine a envelope. It's essentially saying like pay to the order of so and so for X amount.
Right.
And that will be a soft offer check that's essentially 70 to 80% of whatever the home value is. And that's going to get you a great response rate. But obviously, you need to have a strong sales process to be able to overcome like that number if it's not exactly what you could pay. The other
Right.
side of this is the postcard route. Postcards are the cheapest, they're very effective. They work really, really well in those tertiary and secondary markets because of the saturation, in my opinion. I've seen everything else work, but it takes a lot of trial and error and a lot of unique messaging as far as the pieces go. But to me, those are the three biggest things that people are doing right now that work pretty well as far as mails goes. Now, depending where you're at, call and text is a pretty hot topic right now of like, can we do it? Can we not? So that's kind of the first thing is like really figuring out your risk tolerance of like what you're willing to do as far as texting and cold calling goes with like the DNC and all of that. So
Yep.
we have some people that are doing really, really well with cold calling because so many people kind of jumped on the direct mail bandwagon that
Right.
cold calling stuff's getting so much heat and saturation. Now it's starting to work. And I talk a lot about this, but the marketing channels are very like cyclical in the fact of like what works today may not work in 3 months from now. And you
Right.
have to constantly be testing like what is working and what is not, and make sure you change it quickly when like you see your response or your cost per lead go up, as an example. So I'm a big proponent of like testing and split testing and all of that. But call and text, I've not seen a lot of results with texting, but I have seen it work pretty well in some of those tertiary and secondary markets. Cold calling, I think, is starting to come back. And then we get into the digital arena. So
Right.
digital is a really hot topic because it's inbound and everyone loves it. PPL is also huge. So the first thing I would do is PPC if you can afford it. PPC is tried and true, will always work in my opinion because it is literally someone typing in, I want to sell my home for cash or something that's close to that. So
Right.
anyone that has that high of an intent, they're a great lead no matter what. And if you can afford it, amazing route. The other
Right. But
piece
you
of this,
can, but you take the data. So, and you can do this with Bing and Google, correct? So you can take this data,
yes,
import it into the system, create an audience, and then target that specific audience. So I would call it a data flick audience, and then create an entire separate campaign, data flick audience. So now you're not targeting search. You're targeting basically a custom audience that's created within that. So now your your ads are only displaying to the people that are in that audience. So that means they
yes,
have to be online, they have to search. So a performance max campaign would probably be the best because now it's targeting, it's targeting YouTube and all medians on there. So
exactly. So the way I would describe that is like we're just Google with that audience that you could take with our data and with the people who are essentially like doing like typing and searching exactly what we're trying to find. Those are the best, highest intent audiences that you could target. And Google's so good at that. I've seen a lot of people use Meta. It's hit or miss. You're going to get a lot, 30 to 50 bucks, but
right.
that intent's not really there because you can't target what someone is searching. You're really just targeting like baseline demographics, which we've seen to not be very effective, I would say.
Yeah, and I think you said retargeting is probably the best way to use Meta. So you
Yeah,
can get the list. You can drive them through Google. They hit the page, you pixel them, and then you target them on Facebook. That's probably the
100%.
best
I mean,
way.
that is a killer strategy that we know works because it
Yeah.
just makes
Now,
sense, right? Like you're finding the people who have that high intent from Google, and then you're trying to retarget them on as many platforms as you can. And the distressed seller kind of audience loves Meta. They love Facebook. They love Instagram. They love Google and YouTube. They, if I had to say the next thing that they kind of love is probably TikTok, but it's not really worth like investing there, in my opinion, unless you max out literally everything else, is a good way to say it.
right. Now the only thing we're missing, which I've been trying to figure out, is it possible to take your data and send it to TV advertisers to custom ads to people who watch TV? That hasn't been
That's a,
figured out yet. Have you heard
that's a good.
anything like that?
So this is we're gonna get a little deep in the weeds here. So the way that there's kind of like two paths you could go on this. So on the TV route, if you're trying to target someone that is strictly just watching like cable television, you cannot do direct targeting to them. And I will say the demographic of a distressed seller loves TV. So that's why you see TV work in this like marketing age, I would say. On the other side of that, though, there's something called connected TV, which is more of like Hulu and more of like streaming cable, which I think is going to be massive as like, we get older and things like that. So probably the next 5 to 10 years, that's going to be a super, super big market as far as advertising goes. You can do direct targeting on those platforms. As an example, like think about Hulu. Hulu is probably the number one Connect TV platform. And when you're talking about Hulu specifically, anytime that you don't have like that highest paid subscription, you're getting served ads that are intent based, the way Google is. You're also
Yep.
getting ads directly based off someone trying to target you directly. So you can target TV. It just is a matter of like the platforms that you want to target as far as like the channels that you're reaching out to.
So is there an ad platform that will allow you to upload a custom audience and target Hulu and some other streaming platform?
So there are some very large platforms that work with agencies that I know of, and it's called programmatic advertising. So anyone watching, you can feel free to Google programmatic advertising, and there's a ton of different like tools and things like that that you can upload lists to and do direct targeting like that. I know of a few that are pretty large, but you would need to spend 25,000 or more to be on their platform. So
Got
an
it.
example of that would be Simplify. And another example of that would be the Trade Desk. So those are two really large programmatic platforms that are kind of like Google, but they only let you target people based on that kind of connected TV and programmatic advertising,
Got it.
which
That's
is super advanced. I would say
yeah,
they're
but I think, and I've always said, I think like, direct mail, pay-per-click advertising and TV, that are probably the biggest channels that you
oh yeah,
can target. And if you have the ability to bring in that predictive data and this that we're talking about, you can do it for direct mail for sure. You definitely can do it for pay-per-click advertising in those channels. The only variable was TV, but it makes sense now that you can stream, right? So you can actually have your ad in front of that's brilliant. I love that.
the on the realtor side of the house, that is very hot because think about like a family like watching Hulu or watching some kind of streaming like movie or platform, anything like that. Like anyone that's like looking to and thinking about selling, like that is a huge kind of medium for them. The It's still like kind of testing, I would say, of like if our demographic on the distressed seller side is really on Hulu. Like we know they're on Meta, we know they're on Google, and we know that we're on those kind of traditional TV targetings.
Right.
Um, Now it's just a matter of like figuring out if they would respond to that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I can. Yeah, that's true. What the question is, yeah, because now they're going to pay. It's not just regular, normal cable TV and stuff,
Yep.
yeah. But I mean, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start from all of our marketing that we're just going to start asking them what type of TV that do you just have regular cable? Do you have any type of streaming service and stuff? Just for our own internal, it'd be interesting to know.
Oh yeah,
Um,
daytime TV, man, they love
They
it.
do love that daytime TV. All right, so to kind of wrap this up, so for investors, is there anything else that you can think of, or you're coming out with, or in the future that you're releasing, that you're working on, that will give someone an edge?
I would say the market map alone, we are adding so much kind of like feature rich analytics to that a lot of people, I know data's not always fun, but truly like knowing the best areas and the best like and really like what the data is saying in that area, like that is tried and true, like one of the best ways to like increase your ROI in my opinion. And the reason I bring this up, so we did like one of our really big users, like when well before the market map was even launched yet, we're like, okay, where are all the deals that fell out in your wholesaling operation? And we plotted them all on a neighborhood level and a zip code level. 40% of the transactions that fell out that they could not sell all came from neighborhoods that had low investor activity. So to
Mm,
me, everything that's focused on that market map, as far as like the neighborhoods, the zip codes, and things like that, we're adding in crime and school data and trends and forecasts, things like that, of areas if you're building rentals as opposed to like trying to flip. And that tool will always be like a free resource for one county or whatever your market is. And to me, like that is the lowest hanging fruit that anyone can change, because you can just pick the areas that are the best. And
mhm.
really, like the data matters. But if you're just focusing on like that one zip code or that one neighborhood and just hammer that, you're going to get results with a pretty mild budget, I would say. So to me, that would be what I would recommend to anyone listening.
Okay, so a couple problems people have that I'm just going to see if you can solve. Number one is what we have found is you subscribe to a data platform, you download the data, you got to take the data, you got to send it over to the mail house. The mail house takes it, they mail it, right, and then you get a certain amount of return mail, and then you have now this list that has to be scrubbed from the return mail, and then you got to figure out then the next month you got to figure out take off the people that have responded, move it. So the data handling is an issue, right?
Yep.
Especially on scale, right? When you're doing, lots and lots of different lists and you're doing them in bulk, what's the best method to handle that?
So the way that we handle it, that I feel is very strong. So that right before that we send that data out on day to day. So for us, this was the first was on a Saturday. So I think yesterday is when we sent out all of our data on the 3rd. So on June 3rd, we're going to ping the USPS API and say, what is every single address that is not deliverable on this list, and remove it. So I would be shocked if you're going to have more than 10 pieces go out that are essentially being returned at this point, because we're
Hmm.
literally scrubbing it like instantaneously right before you actually get that list. That's the first
Hmm.
thing. So pretty easy to like stop that, in our opinion. The
That's
kind of
nice.
second piece, so you can get some lists and stack them with our list. There's only one list, well, two lists specifically that I think are worth it. One is fire damage properties. If you have a way to like a relationship with a fire department or something like that, any properties that have fire damage, those are killer leads. They're a huge pain to work, but man, I've seen some of the best deals ever be fire damage properties.
Right.
The other side of that is water shutoff lists. We actually do not
Mm.
have that list. Those two specifically, those are the only ones I really recommend people to actually go out and enrich with our data set. Everything else we kind of do for you. Like we're stacking every property so you have every single distress list that you would need inside this data set. So really, we're just giving you like the data that you just need to like upload into your softwares or send to your mail house. And even
Yeah.
then,
So,
like
but
we have relation.
I guess the question is, but okay, I download 10,000 this month, right? And I mail them out, and I put it in Google, I mail it out, I cold call it, whatever, and then I get a new
Yep.
10,000 for the month, right? How do I manage the data? Is there a software to manage the data? Because now I just
Mm,
put it in a PPC. Is there
got you.
is there do I upload it to one of your platforms and now it tells me I've already mailed them once? Did I mail them twice? Did I mail them 3 times? Can I score a list within your platform to target it with certain things? And if you haven't created that product yet, that's your next
It,
product.
yeah, it's funny. Like we're literally launching that between June 15th and July 1st. So imagine a direct integration into like all those marketing softwares. So you can actually see how many touches each property has gotten. And you can really reverse engineer how many touches that person got to get a lead. And then also like you're not wasting your marketing efforts on things that you shouldn't be. So like as an example, there's probably going to be people who will never want to sell, and they'll have to go all the way to the auction house and have a sheriff sale. And maybe after 20 touches, you've like completely given up on that and they just need to be removed from the list entirely. Or maybe you're getting return mail and they need to be tagged that like they can't be mailed, but we need to call and text them or maybe go door knock them.
Right.
So our platform is moving towards that, and we totally agree. Record management is a huge thing. I
Record
will
management.
say the company who does that really, really well is REI Sift, if you're familiar with their platform at all. That it is very advanced as far as what you can do there, but it's a good platform. They're probably one of the best, I would say, at
Yeah,
specifically what you're talking.
like I said, I haven't found a data company integrate with record management well that you can keep you can download it, but it keeps record of it, and then you could tag them all that I sent direct mail on this date, this postcard or whatever, and I uploaded them to for Google, and I put them on Hulu or so, and I got what I mean. So you
Oh
have
yeah,
all that for data management. Another
give us
another
30 days.
question, huh? 30 days. I know. It's kind of funny. Yeah, it's cool. So, one other question is determining or knowing the value that on average in a certain geolocation that buyers are buying properties on a per square foot basis for. So I have a property I just acquired in so and so zip code. I'm under contract. What is the highest price I can sell it for based upon historical data of what has already sold, and who can I sell it to? So could it give me something like that? Because you have the data, it's in your system, right? But is there a way to say, okay, I click on this property and you can sell it for X amount of dollars, you know what I mean? And I've got it for 300, and I can sell it for 397 based upon the price per square foot of what's selling and what investors are actually buying for.
So, a few things. We are coming out with comping as well, and
Perfect.
one thing we didn't really touch on. We have a buyers list that goes out with all of our data. So this will tell you this entity, and here's the signing number for that entity, and that person is skip trace, and it will tell you the amount of transaction that they've actually bought in your market in the last 6 months. So the way that we do that is we're essentially saying, okay, you need to reach out to every person and make sure that they're on your VIP list because they're actively buying today and they're super
Right.
important, good for your list. So that's kind of like the piece that we're building on now is kind of that buyer's guide, that buyer's list implementation. The other piece, anything that those neighborhoods that I was mentioning with all those investor activity. So to me, like those are the highest ROI like pockets in general. That's
Right.
also why we tell you to focus those on those areas specifically. So we can't tell you exactly what you should sell it for and who you should sell it for yet. But if you focus on those areas, that's going to get you the highest ROI.
Yeah, I mean, when you're doing your product development, that is from teaching and talking to people and stuff like that. That is a big thing. If there is a predictive model to know what properties will sell for, it would also give you a really good indication if I'm going to do one of those check mails and stuff of what percentage would get people
Mm.
to be able to pop, you know what I mean, and do that. But anyway, so if I acquired a property and I could go in your system and I could find out exactly what buyers in a certain market are buying for, because it's different in every zip code across the country. You might get a
Oh
certain,
yeah.
or even across Phoenix, you might get Scottsdale and you might get Arcadia, but you might get, Glendale, you might get whatever. They're all going to buy at different price per square foot. And if you have that historical data and it's in that geolocation and it's averaged out between what properties are selling, you can get pretty close that you can make an offer. You can put it out to market, because here's what wholesalers do. They put it out to market. They put it on their list. They email it to everybody or call their buyers, and then it sits there for a week, and then they drop it, and then they drop it, and then they drop it, and then they drop it. Finally, they get it sold. So the
Yep.
predictive model of pricing would be incredibly important, because now you don't have to do the drop. You can actually just know what it's going to sell for.
No, that's great feedback. I mean, it's interesting too because that investor transaction like labeling system is essentially that. We just need to put it into a map where someone can actually like look and see it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. You have the buyer information too. So you pretty much you get everything, right? You get the predictive lists, right, with the high scores, and then, oh, by the way, here's the people to sell it to, and eventually, we're going to give you the price to sell it for, right? So it's
Exactly.
like,
We're trying to make it like as simple as possible. Like you just have to do these things and you'll win.
Yeah, you win, right? Um, okay, so one last question. So out of all your users, if you're going to layer them, are you seeing, are you like hedge funds obviously are probably buying lots of data like you talked about.
Yeah.
Are they realtors, wholesalers, buy and hold investors? Like if you're going to look at your clientele base for DataFlick, and you're going to layer from top to bottom, what is your like clientele base? Are you seeing lots of wholesalers? Are you seeing what are you seeing?
It's a great question. So I always talk about like we want to have the people who perform the best, which obviously that's who we prefer to work with. They are always the people who have kind of the most arrows in their quiver. And what I mean by that is they have a ton of different exit strategies and they always have one that's like most prominent, but they have the capability to do all of them. That's anything from creative financing, buy and hold, flipping, wholesaling, all of it. But the ones that are, I would say, like doing the most activity with us as far as deals go are always going to be hedge funds. And the kind of the next rung down is like turnkey investing. So these are people who are like trying to get a property as close to turnkey and then they sell that property off and then manage it for someone. People below that are wholesaling. I mean, the amount of wholesalers that use us and are in a ton of different markets and they use all of our infrastructure for that kind of buyer side and all of the focusing on the top areas that they can dispo deals to. That's also a huge use case. And then I would say flippers, and then I would say the buy and hold folks. The buy and hold folks, I think primarily they see a ton of success with us, but only when they're at that turnkey and kind of hedge fund level. But if you're
Got it.
just an individual that's trying to build a portfolio, they typically get a lot of their deals from wholesalers, I would say.
Got it. That's brilliant. Well, I think you pretty much covered it all, and it's interesting because I've been doing this for a while. I haven't heard of DataFlick until now, right? So this is the for kind of first time I've heard of there's some other services that have come that approach me and stuff and come out and stuff, um but I'm actually excited to use it. I mean, now talking and as I learn about it and what you guys provide and the data you provide, I don't think I would do marketing without it, actually. You know what I mean? Because especially I do a lot in pay per click and I've been and we're national, right? So I haven't had a good data source that I feel really confident in that I could scale up our direct mail and feel good about it because our cost per lead is significantly higher on direct mail versus pay per click advertising. So now I'm like the median for pay per click. Why would I spend double or triple the cost per lead on direct mail versus that? But you know it's the list. The list is the problem. You know what I mean? And I think as we change out that list and put a higher, better list there, then that cost will come down. And direct mail is infinitely scalable. Infinitely
It is,
scalable.
it is the
So
best channel, in my opinion. The I would say too, like no one has really heard of us unless you've been referred to us. So we're completely organic. You'll never see any marketing, or you may see me at an event or something like that. But just to kind of give some perspective on that, we were 100% product led, and we don't do any real sales and marketing because we felt like if we invested so much into the product, it'll grow on its own. And when it hits that point, that's when we'll start to throw a lot of marketing dollars in. So yeah,
that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, hey, congratulations. Done a great job. A lot of great information, and you answered all my questions, and yeah, it was awesome. So thank you guys so much. All right, so if they want to get the free information, just click the link below in the YouTube video. You can do it down there. You can go Google Data Flick. You can go check that out, dataflick.com. You can check that out and look on there. Is there a special page to get the free map that we're talking about? If they're,
yeah,
if they're
it's
just watching,
actually
they're listening in their car, can they go to dataflick.com/free or something like that?
so if you just go to our site and there's a tab that says Market Map, if you click on that, it'll take you straight through
Oh,
all the sign up process.
oh, perfect. So yeah, I would highly recommend go test that. look at look in your area if you're doing marketing and find out which areas are actually investor transactions going on, so you can see, are you actually targeting the right areas? And I think that alone for free will help you reduce your marketing budget dramatically. And then if you add lead scoring on top of it, then you're going to cut it in half. So, which 100%. I think is great. So, Ty, great job. You did a phenomenal job. Thank you so much for answering all my questions. And everybody, God bless.
I can't take no loss, yeah. I don't even know what it costs, yeah. I hit the ground and it go off, yeah. Hit the ground and it go off, yeah, yeah. Run it, ooh. I really feel it's my time, think it's my year, yeah, yeah. I really feel it's my time, think it's my year, yeah, yeah. I really feel it's my time, think it's my year, yeah, yeah. I really feel it's my time, think it's my